Right before we jump into this video, if you haven't signed up for the FroKnowsPhoto email list, you can do so. Just look for this orange box over on the website, put your name, email address in it, hit send it, and I will send you a free guide to capturing motion in low-light situations. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is a side-by-side comparison of the Nikon 200 to 500mm versus the Sigma 150 to 600mm Sport Edition. Now, these are two of the most popular lenses out there in the super zoom range, and I wanted to run them through their paces side by side to help you guys decide which one is for you if you're looking for a mega zoom. Now, I like to do real-world reviews, so that is what I did with this lens, or both of these lenses. I took them out to a Major League Baseball game. The Phillies were playing the Marlins, and because I was shooting a Major League Baseball game, I wasn't allowed to do any video. That's why I didn't bring a film crew with me, but I still wanted to get the side-by-side comparison in a real world, and there is no better place to test these two super zooms than at a Major League Baseball park. Now, what camera did I use? I used two D4Ss. Why did I use the best sports camera out there in the world right now? Because I wanted to give these lenses the best ability to shine. I wanted the best focusing capability, the best focus tracking capability. I wanted really good ISO quality because you got to remember that these are slower lenses in terms of f-stops, and I wanted to get that better range. So basically, I wanted to give these lenses a fair shake. Now, keep in mind, not everybody's going to have a D4S when they purchase any of these lenses, but I wanted to give it the best ability to get the best shots possible so that there was no concern saying, well, you used a low-end camera and that's why maybe it wasn't as sharp as it should have been, or that's why the contrast or focus tracking or OIS or VR wasn't any good. So with that said, I am going to show you or give you the ability to download all the full res exports from both lenses, as well as give you DNG files to compare side by side, because my goal was to get images that were similar side by side. I was switching camera to camera throughout the entire shoot. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about these lenses at all times. Different pictures are going to pop up just to show you different things, but we're going to get into the computer and show you side by side comparisons to give you what I think about it. So let's go down this list that I have. Both of these lenses give you a huge zoom range. Nikon gives you the 200 to 500. The Sigma goes wider and it goes longer, but there's a trade-off on both sides. The Nikon is a fixed 5.6, which is nice, especially knowing that at 500 you're going to have a 5.6, whereas with the Sigma you're going from f5, which is actually wider, to f6.3 all the way out at the longest end, which means you're losing more light using that lens. Now, price-wise, the Nikon is $1,400, where the Sigma is $2,000, but keep in mind Sigma makes a $1,000 version that may compare a little better to the Nikon version. I just wanted to use the best of the best Sigma with what Nikon considers their best super zoom out there. So pricing-wise, you can see there's a big difference. Either way you slice it, whether you go with the contemporary or the sport on the Sigma side, there's going to be a couple $100 difference either way. So let's look at the weight. The Nikon weighs in at 4.6 pounds, whereas the Sigma weighs in at 6.3 pounds. So you're looking at almost a 2-pound difference. That is a lot of weight that you have to carry around all day. That's why when I used the Sigma during the baseball game, I used a monopod, and with the Nikon, I didn't need the monopod because I could handhold that much easier. Now, the Sigma Contemporary is about the same weight as the Nikon version is right there. Let's talk about size and feel. The Nikon, smaller and lighter. Sigma, a little bit more heavy. Zoom range. The Nikon zoomed much easier. I don't know if it was a difference between makes of lenses, but the Sigma was very tight. It was harder to turn, which makes it harder to shoot, because when you're trying to track something and you're now concentrating on zooming, that's a little more difficult. Focus speed, very good on both sides. Both of them tracked the subjects very well, didn't miss focus on pretty much any of the shots that I took. iOS and VR, both of those handled very well, gave me nice image stabilization, and focus tracking, both were very good. So they both give you a great zoom range. What do I like about the range? Well, you have 200 to 500 or 150 to 600. That is a massive amount of room. Normally, when you see pros shooting sports, they're using 300 2.8s, 400 2.8s, 5 and 600 millimeter f4s. They use those and they're a hell of a lot more expensive. You're looking at $12,000 for one of those 600 millimeters. They use those because of the clarity and the focus speed and the sharpness and just the beautiful bokeh that they're going to get. But if you're not going to spend that money and you want to spend $2,000 or less, you kind of can't go wrong with one of these mega zooms. But one of the main concerns with all of the mega zooms like this is the 5.6 or the 6.3 apertures. That means that these are meant for bright day shooting. I shot on an overcast day, which meant I was pushing the ISO to 3200 or 4000. So you're not going to use this type of lens indoors. It's not going to be a great lens for shooting in low light situations because you're going to have to bump up your ISO so high, which is going to in turn hurt the quality of your images. But the zoom range that you're getting is something that you're not going to get with a fixed 300 millimeter or a fixed 600 millimeter. So it's all a trade-off. Plus, you're saving a lot more money. We did that trade-offs. So we're talking about who it's for right now. It's for somebody that's going to shoot birds. It's somebody that's going to shoot sports outdoors, and you're not worried about blowing out that background as much, what they call the bokeh. You can still blow out the background. You can still get nice focusing speed and nice hand-holding ability. But I will tell you that I did feel that on both lenses sides, they weren't super, super tack sharp. Now, they're sharp, or they're in focus, but it doesn't have that super tack sharpness that you get with a 600 f4 or a 300 2.8 or a 400 2.8. But again, is it fair to compare a $2,000 or less lens to a $6,000, $7,000, or a $13,000, $14,000 lens? No, not really. Let's turn to the computer, look at the side-by-side comparisons, and then we can wrap it up and you can make a decision for yourself. So here what I've done is I've tried to, I'm not going to show you all of them. I'm not going to show you all of them because I took a lot of pictures. I took almost 1,000 pictures between both, a little over 1,000 pictures as you can see over here with both lenses, but I tried to do side-by-sides to get similar images. So something like this, here we go. Let's do that. You can see that they're pretty similar. One's at 320 millimeters on the Nikon side, and on the Sigma side, we're at 340 millimeters, so pretty similar. And as you zoom in this case, you gotta, I don't know, what's better? That's why I'm giving you both of these files to pixel peep yourself to decide which is better. I think they both handle well, and if I'm being completely straightforward with you, I think the Sigma throughout the shoot feels a little better in terms of clarity and sharpness. In terms of contrast, I think that the Sigma is showing a little bit more contrast with less work than what the Nikon is doing. And of course, I've processed all these images because that's how you're going to get the best determination of how good it all is. So let's zoom in here. Get out of here, iCloud preferences. I notice this. The foot is much sharper there than it is here. It's subtly out. And the dirt, all of this seems to be much more fine detailed than on the Nikon side. But in the bokeh area, it seems like the Sigma is bringing out a little bit more grain or noise than smoothness on the Nikon side. This is nitpicking, guys. So I'm not a big fan of nitpicking and pixel peeping. If I need to zoom in 1:1 to see minor differences, then there might be a problem, but that's why I'm giving you all the files to play with yourself to determine that on your own. So let's keep moving down the list here. Similar images, you can play with them. I really just want to show you guys photos here. So I put both of those side by side. You can do that. I don't want to look at those side by side. Let's look at these side by side because they're pretty similar. Hit that. Hit the Y, this button right here, and zoom in. So what do we have over here? This is the Sigma on the left, and we've got the Nikon on the right. And I guess it's going to vary from image to image because, of course, sharpness and movement, you can see that 1/4000th of a second versus 1/5000th of a second. I tried to keep everything similar. In this case, you're at 6.3. This one's at 5.6. They're all very similar. You got to try to determine. I can't tell you which bokeh is better. I really can't. I can't tell you which color is better because a lot of that comes down to how I'm editing it. But these are very similar images. Almost exactly the same. Of course, not taken at the same time because I'm using two different cameras and I didn't set them up to shoot at the same time. but the Sigma looks a little cleaner to me in the face. It just looks like it's not as muddy, where the Nikon seems to be a little more muddy. So we'll go through a couple of these. Let me get rid of the side-by-side comparisons, just to show you some of the ones that I got. This is Nikon 200 to 500. This is what I'm talking about sharpness. It looks sharp, but it's not super duper as extremely tack as you would get with one of the higher end lenses. Is it bad? By no stretch of the imagination, no. It's very good, and this is nitpicking with what I'm doing right now. I love the range that it gives you. Something like this, you know, it looks good, but remember, you're bumping your ISO up higher to get these images because I'm shooting sports. I want a faster shutter speed. You have to keep all of that in mind when you're shooting. Again, we've got the Nikon 200 to 500. You have a nice range. I found myself shooting these lenses 300 and further, except for when I was closer to home plate where I was sitting and I needed to get that wider shot. I liked having the Sigma give me the wider shot because 150 is a nice range compared to the 200, and then being able to reach all the way out and grab a 600 millimeter is absolutely insane. I love the wider 150 to 600 versus 200 to 500, but the trade-offs are one weighs 4 pounds, one weighs 6 pounds, one's easier to carry around. They're both big. You're going to have to decide which ones you like. So let's keep moving. This is the Nikon again. Now, this is one of the issues I ran into with the Sigma. It's like I couldn't get the focus on the eye. It's not the D4S's problem, and it's not my problem because I know I'm on focus where I want to be, but it just couldn't hit where I wanted on that tight focus where I wanted it. But the color and the contrast look beautiful, especially when the sun finally freaking came out because it was an overcast day. The tones here look great. The compression looks great. Yes, the background is a little more distracting than if you were using a 2.8 or an f4, but that's what's going to happen. You're just not able to blow the background out as much at 6.3 or 5.6. So this is at 300 millimeters, you can see that it's a 5.6, but anytime you go after that, so like 320 millimeters, then you're starting to look at it going to f6 and climbing up from there. But really nice contrast, really nice tones. That's the Nikon again. This is the Sigma, 550 millimeters. Again, Sigma, 270 millimeters. I am sitting really close to the field, awesome place. And those are the sample images. I'm giving you the rest of them to play with. All of the ones I shot, all of the keepers that I've edited, you can download and play with the JPEGs. And I'm giving you a handful of RAW files to play with so you can pixel peep all you want. So who is it for? Not who's it for, but which one do I think is better? I think it's very hard to tell you hands down that one is better than the other. There are trade-offs. The Nikon is lighter and easier to carry around, and you don't need a monopod. The Sigma, I think, is sharper, gives you a better contrast, gives you a better tone with less work in the editing of the file, but it's much heavier. It's built better. It's built extremely well. It is a professional lens at $2,000, but do I want to carry around a 6.3 pound lens? But then again, on both sides, you have a huge, huge range. Nowhere in any of the Nikon or the Canon or the Sony sides or whatever, or Sigmas, are you going to find mega zooms that you're going to reach as far as you can with something like this. Canon has a 100 to 400. I rather buy a Sigma 150 to 600, even though the Canon's lighter. I think that that's a great lens, you know? So it's going to come down to you guys deciding, is the weight an issue? Do you need more reach? Do you need it to be wider? Can you live with 6.3 versus a 5.6? There's not a huge difference between the roughly a third of a stop right there between the 5.6 and the 6.3. Focus speeds are great. Clarity is great. I've talked about this ad infinitum already. I don't want this to go too long. If I had to pick one to use more, I would be more apt to take the Nikon version around because it's lighter and it's easier to carry. And plus, if I'm going to shoot a concert, and I know, which I've done, I've shot Hall & Oates with a 200 to 500, that 5.6, I don't want to go to 6.3. Now I'm bumping my ISO up to 10,000 or higher, and I'm starting to run into trouble. You have to take into consideration the body that you're using. Lower-end bodies at higher ISOs aren't going to compare to what the D4S is going to do, so take that into consideration. But if you need a mega zoom, you can't go wrong with the 200 to 500 Nikon at $1,400. And if you can afford the higher-end Sport Edition for the Sigma 150 to 600, it's a great lens. They're both great lenses. If I needed to give an edge, getting rid of weight and everything else and just look at image quality, I may give an edge to the Sigma Professional, the Sport. I don't think the Contemporary would match. The Contemporary would be a good combination to go with the 200 to 500 Nikon, but if I had to choose quality-wise, I'll go with the 150 to 600 Sigma by a little bit. Minuscule amount do I think that the quality of the images are better. I'll leave it at that. You can download all the raw files and everything for yourself to try it out. And that is it. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.